Okay. All right, good evening, everybody, and good Chodesh. Chodesh Tov. I assume I'm speaking in English, right? Is that correct? Okay, all right. First of all, I'd like to thank Rabbi Yitzhak for inviting me to speak tonight, and hopefully, depending on the results tonight, hopefully in the future as well. The topic is a very interesting one, and I was thinking about it before, after I'd been asked, but before the title was given. I was thinking a good title would be Dancing with the Stars, no? But that was taken already, so we decided on something else. That's okay, good. The idea of astrology is not really part of Jewish thought, as most of you probably know. In the sense that we don't try and divine our future necessarily from ideas which are associated with clusters of stars, which are the mazalot, etc., which I'll explain as we're going along. Now, the main source of understanding what the mazalot are and what the various effects of the mazalot are is in fact from Sifrei Kabbalah and primarily Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is a book, the book of formation as it's called. Sefer Yetzirah was a book that was, according to our tradition, compiled by Avraham Avinu. The last Mishnah in Sefer Yetzirah alludes to the fact that it was compiled by Avraham Avinu. But he didn't write it down, he transmitted the teachings all the way through to his children, his children's children, and so on and so forth. These teachings were known and passed down from generation to generation. And eventually the teachings were written down, just like the Mishnah was written down later on by the sages, by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So there were various other parts of the oral Torah that were written down by the Chachamim when they realized that it might be lost forever due to Roman persecution, etc., etc. So Rabbi Akiva, the famous Rabbi Akiva, is said to have written it down and passed it on. Now, the Sefer Yetzirah itself has many girsa'ot. There's a lot of different versions of it and a lot of ideas which are repeated in different language, in different concepts. And there's more or less a standard version, but the version that we're going to use tonight is the version of the Arizal. Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, the famous Kabbalist from Tzfat, he's the one who we're going to take as our authority, and why not? I mean, the Arizal is the authority. So, without further ado, let me just explain what I'm going to be doing now. I'm going to be looking at the concept of mazalot and the constellations, the stars, etc., as they appear in Mikra, in the Torah, and in Nevi'im, and then some discussion in the Talmud, in the Gemara, and eventually with commentaries, and then eventually we'll go to the Kabbalistic interpretations and understanding of what these things are all about. So, without further ado, let's begin with the concept of the mazalot. What are exactly these mazalot? People understand the mazalot to be the various 12 constellations in the sky, which have various names. I'm sure you've seen them, Aquarius, Capricorn, Pisces, etc., etc. We'll call them according to their Jewish names, and we'll get to those soon. But we have a question. And the question is from Mikra itself, from the Torah itself, from Dvarim. There's a pasuk in Dvarim, Daled Yud Tet, which says as follows. I'll read the Hebrew and then translate. Upen tisa enecha hashamayma, lest you lift up your eyes upon to the heavens. V'ra'ita et hashemesh ve'et hayareach, and you see the sun and the moon, ve'et hakochavim and the stars. Called Tzva HaShamayim, all the hosts of heaven, v'nidachta v'yishtachvita lahem, and you'll be pushed off. In other words, you'll you'll go and follow that way of worship, the way of worship of the stars and the sun, etc., etc. והשתחווית להם ועבדתם אשר חלק השם אלוקינו אותם לכל העמים תחת כל השמיים. And you do just like the non-Jewish people do. They bow, they worship the stars, they bow down to them, and they treat them as gods. So the Torah says explicitly, this is asur. It's out of your reach. You're not allowed to do it. The Ramban, commenting on this idea, Asher chalak Hashem elokecha otam lechol ha'amim. Hashem gave these ideas over to the rest of the nations, but not to the Jewish people. So the Ramban explains as follows: Ki lechulam kochav u'mazal. Each of them have a kochav, a star, u'mazal, and a constellation of stars. Ugvohim aleim malachei elyon, and above them are the angels. Kagon haneemar b'Daniel, and he goes on to quote the pasuk in Daniel where this is spoken about. And he goes on and he says, Ve'etchem lakach Hashem, ki atem chelek Hashem. And he took you for himself. In other words, Bnei Israel, he took for himself. And as far as the stars and everything else is concerned, leave it out of the picture, right? Not for you. That is what the Ramban says. And he goes on to explain that the nations of the world were not zocher, they weren't worthy of, they didn't have the merit of receiving the true teachings which we have received, and therefore it is not forbidden for them to regard other things as deities, even though they also have to acknowledge Elokah de Elokaya, the God of gods. In other words, the God of all of these things. We'll continue and we'll see. There's now a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, in other words, in the Nevi'im. Yirmiyahu says as follows: Hu amar Hashem. This is what Hashem says. El derech hagoyim al tilmadu. Do not learn from the ways of the non-Jews. Umeotot hashamayim al techatu. And from the signs of the heavens, do not be afraid. Ki achatu hagoyim behema. Only the nations of the world are worried about them, are fearful of them. You don't have to worry about them at all. Okay, so Mikra seems to be pretty clear. As far as the Torah is concerned, this is not for us, and we should leave it out. Why then do we find in the Gemara a famous discussion between two Chachamim? This is Gemara Shabbat, Kuf Nun Vav, Amud Aleph to Bet. If anyone is interested in looking it up there, and the commentaries. The Gemara says as follows. It's discussing this whole idea of the Mazalot. Itmar. The discussion was recorded of Rabbi Hanina and his Bar Brukta, as we will see shortly. The person was arguing with him, and it says as follows. Itmar Rabbi Hanina Omer. Rabbi Hanina says as follows. Mazal machkim, mazal ma'ashir. It's the mazal which causes people to become intelligent and which causes a person to become wealthy. V'yesh mazal Yisrael, and even Jews have a mazal. That's what Rabbi Hanina says. Rabbi Yochanan argues with him and he says, Ein mazal Yisrael. Jews do not have a mazal. We don't have any mazal. The rest of the nations, yes, we don't. And now the Gemara goes on to explain. V'azadar Rabbi Yochanan l'tameh. Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning why Jews don't have a mazal. Da'amar Rabbi Yochanan, minayin she'en mazal Yisrael. How do we know that there's no mazal which applies to the Jewish people? Shene'emar ko amar Hashem. And he goes on to quote this pasuk that we already spoke about from Yirmiyahu. And he goes on and he says that Hem yachatu v'lo Yisrael. Only they have to fear the mazalot, not the Jewish people. We don't have to fear the mazalot. Nothing to worry about when it comes to the constellations, the stars, etc., etc. Don't worry about it. And how do we know? How does he know this? How does Rabbi Yochanan know this? The Omar Rabbi Yehuda Omar Rav. Says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav, Minayin she'en mazal Yisrael. How do we know that Jews do not have a mazal? Shene'emar, as it says, Vayotze oto hachutza, that Abraham Avinu, Hashem said to him, go outside and look at the stars, Amar Avraham Livnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, said Avraham to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Ben Beiti Yoreshoti, my servant Eliezer will inherit me, because I don't have any children. He was asking a question, will Eliezer inherit me? Omar Lo Lav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Abraham, no, that's not going to happen. Ki mashe yetzeh mimecha, only what comes out of your own flesh, out of your own innards. Omar Lafanav, Abraham Avinu replies, and he says to Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the worlds, Nistakalti ba'atztignanut sheli, I looked into my the future in the stars. I looked into the Itzagninut. Ve'eni ro'eh loholid ra'ui, ve'eni ra'ui loholid ben, and it says over there that I'm not worthy of having a child. I won't be able to have a child. Amar lo, said HaKadosh Baruch Hu would say, Mi'itzagninut shelcha, go out of your constellations, go away from them. She'ein mazal li Yisrael. And that's what he said. Say hachutza, go outside of these natural events which you can see and you can predict in the stars, because that's not where you're at. That's not for you. So there's an argument we see between two very great Chachamim, Rav Chanin and Rabbi Yochanan, and they're arguing about whether the mazal, and most of the Chachamim follow the opinion that there's no mazal li Yisrael. No mazal li Yisrael, so we want to go pack up and go home. There's nothing to talk about, right? Okay. Wait. Now we come to another Masechta, another discussion of the Chachamim, and it says in Moed Katan, Amar Rava, says Rava, the very great sage Rava, Chai Bana Mazoina Lo B'Zchut Atalya, a person's health and his life, his children, and his Parnasah, his the living that he makes, Lo B'Zchut Atalya, do not depend on his merit. Ela b'mazal talya. They depend on the mazal. They depend on his mazal. So wait a second. What's going on over here? We're just asking in the Gemara, according to the majority of opinions, there's no mazal for Yisrael. And here we go and say in a different Masechta, Rava argues that there is a mazal. How do we know? Because he says there's several things that depend on the mazal. What are the things that depend on the mazal? Your health and your life and your health, your children and your mazalot, your parnasah depends on the mazal. There's other places as well. There's several places in Gemara. I just chose a couple of them because it's too many to discuss all of them. But there are a lot of different places. Pika de Rebbe Eliezer, and Pika de Rebbe Eliezer also has the same shita, the same understanding. That there are, it says there's 12 mazalot, and these correspond to the 12 chodashim. One mazal for each chodesh, one mazal for each month. And these mazalot were created at the time of creation when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. He created the mazalot because they have an effect and they're necessary and they do certain pulot, they do certain things, and therefore they're part of the system of creation, and we have to have them. Similarly, Midrash. I'm just going through a few sources, so you'll see that this is not just coming out of pie in the sky. This is a big discussion amongst Chazal. It says in the Midrash, Omar Rabbi Simon, En lecha kol esev ve'esev she'en lo mazal berekia shemakeh oto bo'omer lo gdal. There's not even a blade of grass in the sky on the ground that doesn't have a malach above it, a mazal above it, which causes it to grow, which hits it, so to speak, and tells it grow. Very, very difficult to understand how this could all be if ein mazal Yisrael. It seems to be two different shitot, two different approaches. Some people say there is a mazal, some say there's not, but we have to know the facts. Is there or isn't there? Is there something we have to think about, we have to worry about? It seems expressly in the psukim that we don't have to worry about them. It says explicitly, don't worry about it, it's all fine. Nothing, you don't have to worry about it. That's for the non-Jews, for the Goyim. Similarly, Breshit Rabbah brings the same thing. Every blade of grass has a mazal above it, which causes it to grow. Along comes the Kuzari, and the Kuzari is a famous philosophical approach to inyanim, to concepts in Jewish thought. So the Kuzari tries to solve this issue. And he says, it's true that there is a thing called a mazal, but the mazalot don't have any wisdom of their own, and they don't have any control. They just have a function. They function in a certain way, and that's it, right? There's no wisdom to them. There's nothing special about them, and therefore it's not ra'ui, it's not proper to pray to the mazalot or to try and make something happen with the mazalot. It's not Quran. It's not necessary, and it's not even possible, because this is just the way things are. Just as you can't move the stars, you can't change the mazalot, and you can't do anything. Nothing that you do is going to make any difference anyway. They just have their pu'ula, and that's it. They have what they do. Okay, so we're stuck. Where do we go from here? What is the solution? There's a famous chacham called the Ran. And in his drashot, which are more sort of, he was much more of a halachic decider than a philosopher, but he has a book called Drashot Haran where he brings certain philosophical concepts and he explains them. And here the Drashot Haran actually does explain to us a path that will see us through both shitot. In other words, we can accept that there is such a thing as mazalot, at the same time that they don't affect us, the Jewish people, and how this works. He starts to explain, and he says as follows. Again, he's talking about the mazalot, and he said like this: Ki hamazal b'inyan hamitzvot v'haverot. As far as the mazal is concerned, and mitzvot and haverot, mitzvah and the opposite of a mitzvah, noten hachana levad v'lo machriach. It only makes preparation for certain things without forcing anything to happen, right? The mazal doesn't force anything to happen. It only creates a certain situation. So, for example, a person is born with certain qualities. He's born with certain looks, which today we can change mostly, just go to a plastic surgeon, whatever. But he's born in a certain way, a certain height, and a certain qualities, physical qualities. And just as in general we can't change the physical qualities, they're only a hachana. And the hachana of your guf, the preparation of your body, the way your body is, doesn't say who you're going to be and what you're going to be. It's just that this person is tall and that person is short and that person is dark and that person is light and that person's heavy and so on and so forth. Different qualities, but it says nothing about what kind of a person this is going to be. It's only a hachana, it's a preparation. It doesn't force it to be anything. That a person is tall doesn't force it to be a good person or a bad person. Okay. And then he goes on to explain, and he says like this: Ki hamazal po'el begufot. The mazal has an effect on the body until it has an effect on actually how you're born. In other words, the day you're born, the hour you're born, the minute you're born, the chelek of a minute that you're born is significant in terms of the way you're born, what your body is going to be like, and so on. But it doesn't determine what kind of person you are, as you'll go on to say. And then po'el benefesh. It only affects the body, it doesn't affect the nefesh. The nefesh is what is shayach to Torah and mitzvot, and the body is subject to the nefesh. The nefesh controls the body, and therefore, whatever a person's body turns out to be doesn't really make all that much difference. It's only a preparation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepares certain bodies for certain shamot because they have a certain type of work to do. And therefore, even though the mazalot have an effect on the physical, they don't have an effect on the spiritual. They don't have an effect on the nefesh. And he goes on and explains it in greater detail. And he says that anything that is sort of in nature, in other words, the natural body and the world around us, that is affected by the mazal. But things that are not natural, Torah and mitzvot, which transcend nature, that were given to us by Hashem, that goes according to the soul, it goes according to the nefesh, not according to the mazal. And he brings a proof. He says as follows: And therefore they say in the Gemara in Nida, there's an angel which is in charge of birth and death. In charge of birth. There's an angel which is in charge of hirayon, birth, pregnancy. So this angel, before the child is born, he takes this tipa, this drop, to before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he puts this drop in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the drop that's going to fertilize the egg, and then the child will be conceived. And he says to Hashem, Tipa zo ma tehei alea. What is going to be with this drop? Chacham or tipesh? Is it going to turn into a chacham, a wise person, or a fool? Is it going to be wise or going to be foolish? Ashir or ani? Is it going to be rich or is it going to be poor? And various other things. And then the Gemara goes on to say that all of these things may be, yeah, he'll be rich, he'll be poor, he'll be tall, he'll be short, he'll be chacham, he'll be tipesh. Yes, that's already determined by the time when that child is conceived. But tzaddik and rasha doesn't discuss. Tzaddik and rasha is beyond the purview of mazalot. Whether the person will be righteous, the person will be a rasha, a wicked person, an evil person, that does not depend on the mazal. That only depends on the person himself. Okay. There's many other insights from various of the Chachamim. For example, Rabbeinu Bachir, Rabbeinu Bachaya, if you want to say it like that. And he says that everything, even though there is a natural sequence of things in the world, and the world has been created in a certain way, nevertheless, due to Torah and Mitzvot, Hashem is Meshaded HaMa'aracha. Hashem reorganizes all the heavens and everything like that, lefi schar v'onesh, according to reward and punishment that is due to a certain person or due to a group as a whole, etc. In other words, things can change, but only according to Torah and Mitzvot. As the verse says, and he quotes a pasuk, Ratzon Yerav Yaseh. Ratzon Yerav Yaseh. He'll do the will of his Yereim, those that fear him. Okay. So far, we've just discussed the approach of the Gemara and the Chachamim who deal with this idea. The Zohar, however, has a very, very different approach, and says as follows. Now, let me just sum up to where we're up to now. Some of the Chachamim said there are mazalot, and there's even a mazal in Israel, and others say there are mazalot, but there's no mazal in Israel. Along came the Ran, and he explained that yes, there's mazalot, but the mazalot only affect the guf, the body. They don't affect the neshama, and they don't affect anything that has to do with Torah and mitzvot. So we've solved the problem to a certain extent, because one opinion says there are mazalot and they affect Bnei Israel, but what do they affect? They only affect the guf, affect the body. The other one says that there's no mazalot. In other words, there's no mazalot as far as the neshama and the neshama is concerned, as far as the nefesh is concerned. Okay. Along comes the Zohar, and the Zohar has a whole different approach to this idea. First of all, the Zohar says, as far as the regular opinion is concerned, this was all true until the Torah was given. It's true that there were mazalot and they affected people, etc., but after the Torah was given, no more. Doesn't affect Jewish people anymore. Once the Torah was given, we were taken out, as Hashem said to Abraham Avinu, go outside. In other words, go out of this realm of thinking about things according to nature, according to the natural signs that you see in the heavens. Go out of that, transcend that, and you will understand that a Jew does not go according to nature. He's not bound by the laws of nature like everybody else. That's one thing that the Zohar brings, but then it says much more than that. The Zohar says this whole concept of mazal is really divided into two ideas. One concept in the mazal is the constellations of the stars, in other words, certain natural forces that have an effect. just like gravity has an effect, the sun has an effect on us, the moon has an effect on us. As you know, lunatics, why is a person called a lunatic? Because when the moon is in a certain full moon or whatever it is, right, they go nuts, right? That's the lunatic, right? Because of the moon is the moon, right? It's true. And when a person lives in Chicago and it's cloudy for 2 weeks and you don't see the sun, you start to get moody and depressed, right? And when there's lots of sunshine, you relax. No, take California as an example, Florida. People are much more relaxed there. Why? Because the weather's nicer. So it does affect you. There's no question about it. It does affect, but it doesn't affect the Torah and mitzvot. Okay, say that. But that's only one aspect of the mazal. There's the natural aspect of the mazal. In other words, those things that affect the person or affect the world and affect the goof. But there's another whole concept in mazal, says the Zohar, and that is the word mazal is from the word nozel, yizal, right? To flow down. It's a downflow from a much higher level, from a very high, very, very high spiritual level. It says the Zohar, I'm not going to get into it now because it's beyond the scope of what we're talking about, but basically there is an aspect which is called Arich Anpin. I'm not going to go into it now, but for those who are familiar with these concepts, Arich Anpin, and the Zakon of Arich Anpin is called the Chuta Yakira. It's the thread which comes down from an extremely high level called Keter, one of the outer dimension of Keter, and it flows down through this Chuta Yakira, and that's called the Mazal. In other words, the Mazal is the outflow of energy, of divine energy, which comes from an extremely elevated level and flows down into this world. Who does it flow down into this world to? To people who do Torah and mitzvot. That's who it flows down to. People who do not follow Torah and mitzvot, says the Zohar, well, their Mazal is kind of sleeping, right? That flow doesn't come to them. Why does it not come to them? Because they blocked it off. So therefore, they are subject much more to things, to events that go on in the world. Someone who subjects himself only to worldly matters is going to be much more affected by them than someone who holds on to this holy thread that connects him to something much, much higher. And if he's connected to something higher, then the physical world doesn't affect him in the same way. The mazalot have no effect on such a person. And on the contrary, says the Zohar, the tzaddikim have the ability to change the mazalot and to do whatever needs to be done in order to make things better for an individual or for the nation or for a group of people, etc., etc. And we see a proof of this from the fact that the Chachamim, when they declared the Chodesh, today's Rosh Chodesh, but when they would declare the Chodesh, today we do Rosh Chodesh is according to calculation, but it was in times of old, in times of the Tanakh, that they would, and even in the times of the Chachamim until the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, but they would declare the month according to witnesses that came to see. If the witnesses witnesses who saw the rising of the new moon, right? Then they would declare the Chodesh. Now, if it happened that there were no witnesses, then they would go according to their calculation. They knew when it had to be. They knew precisely when, just as we know precisely today, and even much more precisely, exactly when the Chodesh began, exactly when the light of the sun touches the moon once again. And they would go according to calculation. Now, what if for some reason the Chachamim, either they made a mistake, or for some reason they decided that they had to make an ibush, and they had to make an extra month or an extra day in the month or whatever, right? So there's a pasuk in Tehillim, I think it's 51 if I'm not mistaken, Nun Aleph, 57. Lakel Gomar Alai. Doesn't matter if the Chachamim change things at the last minute, Lakel Gomar Alai, everything will be changed in order to make things fit into the decision that the scholars, the sages of the Torah decided. They made a decision that this is the halacha, and everything is changed according to that. Therefore, a girl who was over the age of 3, now it's the Gemara says, Betuleha Chozrim. She returns to be, even though she was a day over the age of 3, and somehow or other she lost her virginity. Now, since they changed the month, they added an extra month, she's now once again retained her virginity. Okay, I shouldn't really talk about this, but okay, my apologies. All right, nevertheless, the Zohar is very clear, and the Zohar says that there is a mazal, but the mazal that affects Bnei Israel is the flow that's coming from very, very high up. Okay. Interestingly, there are a number of Mekubalim and Chachamim who expand on this idea. And they say as follows. The Zohar had said that even the Sefer Torah Shebehechal is talui on the mazal, right? Depends on the mazal. So the Zohar explains what it means when it says that the Sefer Torah, even the Sefer Torah depends on the mazal. It depends on the flow from above. That's what the Zohar came to the conclusion. Says that the Rabbi Menachem Mirakanati, who's a famous Italian Mekubal, and he says as follows. Some people call him Rakanti, but his name is really Rekanati. Rekanati is a well-known Italian Jewish name, actually. So he says as follows. He says, Ki Sefer Torah atzmo, misham sho'ev u'mekabel. The Torah itself receives its flow, its power, so to speak, from that mazal. In other words, from that flow that comes down, in technical jargon, from Arich Anpin. Arich Anpin represents the will of Hashem. Yeah, the Ratzon of Hashem. Arich Anpin is the Ratzon, and Atik Yomin is the Ta'anug in Keter. The Pnimiut Keter, Chitzoniut Keter. I'm not going to get into it now because it's beyond the scope, but for those who understand, they'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so even the Sefer Torah depends on the Mazal. In other words, the Sefer Torah is the revelation of Hashem's will. The mitzvot in the Torah are the revelation of Hashem's will. And that's what it means that even the Sefer Torah is talui al mazal. Others go on. The Maharal says that it's possible to change the mazalot, even in a physical sense, through mitzvot. And for sure through tefillah, no question about it. But even through mitzvot, it's possible to change the mazal. There's the Yavetz who goes on to say that the mazalot are simply, they have no opinion of their own. The mazalot don't rule over anything. They're just simply like an axe in the hand of a wood chopper, right? He chops down a tree, he needs a tool. And the tool is an axe, and that's how he chops down the tree. Similarly with the mazalot, that's simply the tools, the vessels, the means, the tzinorot, the pipeline by which Hashem does what he has to do in the world. And we know this from the Pasuk in Tehillim, which says, La Hashem ha'aretz umlo'ah. Everything in the earth and the earth itself belong to Hashem. There's one more pirush before we actually get on to this particular month, the month of Shevat, which we need to discuss. And that is a statement from the Maggid Mezrich. The Maggid Mezrich was the chief disciple, and eventually the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. And he said, when it says, Ein Mazal Yisrael, what does that mean? It means, Ha'ayin hu ha'mazal Yisrael. The ayin, the nothingness, is the mazal for Israel, and ayin in Kabbalah refers to the level which is called Keter. V'chochma ma'ayin timatzeh. The sphira of chochma comes out of Keter, right? V'chochma ma'ayin timatzeh. Pasuk in Iyov. And therefore, he says, that's what it's talking about. Ein mazal Yisrael. Ha'ayin hu ha'mazal Yisrael. Ayin is the mazal for Bnei Israel. And that is where our flow, so to speak, comes from. There's many, many more pirushim and ideas that are brought. One beautiful idea is brought by the Sfat Emet. Sfat Emet was the Gerer Rebbe, the first Gerer Rebbe. And he says, he goes through this whole discussion about the mazalot. And he said, why then do you have mazalot and why do you have neshamot? Like, what's the connection between mazalot and neshamot? So he says, the neshamot came down, the souls came down to this world to be in a body where the body is affected by the mazalot. Why? not so that the person would be affected by the mazalot, but that we would affect the mazalot. We would change the mazalot. We would raise up nature, natural forces, raise them up to the level of neshama. That's why the soul came down to the body, so that we should bring the body up to the level of the soul, and not the other way around. The body shouldn't draw the neshama down, but the neshama should lift the body up. And that is the whole purpose of the mazalot. That's why the mazalot are here in the first place. Now, we said before that there are, is everything clear so far? Any questions? No? Okay, so there are 12 months, and how do we get the fact that, how do you know the 12 months? Where do we know this from, right? Who said the 12 months? So, the Sefer Yetzirah explains that the 12 months are derived from the fact that the Shem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Shem Hashem, the name of Hashem, the ineffable name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei Havaya, that name has 12 possible combinations. For mathematicians, it's called 4 factorial divided by 2 factorial, because 4 factorial means 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 equals 24, but divided by 2 factorial because they're 2 letters that are the same, 2 hays, right? So you have 12 tzirufim, 12 possible combinations of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Each month has 1 combination of Yud Kei Vav Kei. They can be combined in different, not combined, I'm sorry, what's the word? Permutated. 12 different permutations of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. 12 different permutations. Okay. Those are the, so what's the question? There's a question immediately that arises. What about? What about a leap month? Exactly, that's the question. Next month we're going to answer that, because next month is the leap month. Okay, so we'll answer that next time around. Adar Rishon is the, according to most opinions, is the leap month, is the added month. Okay. Okay, so says the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah says as follows. This is a Perek Dalet. Arba Avanim, there are 4 stones, build 24 houses, right? 2 stones build 2 houses. What are stones? Stones are letters, right? Everything is built through the letters of creation. The Sefer Yetzirah explains that all of the letters are compared with stones, and stones build houses, right? Letters build houses. What's a house? The minimum house is 2 letters. Aleph Bet, Bet Aleph, right? So 2 stones build 2 houses. Aleph Bet, Av, and switch it around, Ba. Av and Ba, right? 3 stones build 6 houses, 4 stones build 24 houses. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, right? Except if you have 2 letters the same, Yud Kei Vav Kei, so it comes out that the 12 permutations. That's why there's 12 permutations altogether in the year. There's 12 permutations because there's 12 possible combinations, or not combinations again, permutations of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Okay. So the Sefer Yetzirah goes on to say even further. Not only are there 12 permutations of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, and we'll discuss this a little bit further in a minute, but there are also 12 letters which correspond to the months. The letters are divided into 3. There's 3 classes of letters, says the Sefer Yetzirah. There's what is called the Imot. The Imot. The Imot means the mother letters, which are Aleph, Mem, and Shin. Right? Why they call them mother letters is a bit of a complicated thing, but basically these are called the mother letters, the letters that, so to speak, give birth to everything else. Emesh, right? Aleph, Mem, and Shin. Then you have the Sheva Kfulot. Sheva Kfulot are those letters which can take a Dagesh or a Rafeh, right? Dagesh and Rafeh. Some letters like a Bet, for example, can be pronounced Bet or Vet, right? If you're a Taimani, you'll know that Gimel can also be spelled with a so can also be pronounced as J or G, depending on if it's a Dagesh or doesn't have a Dagesh, right? So the letters that have a Dagesh are called Beged Kefret or Beged Kaperet or Kaporet, however you want to say it. There's different ways of saying it. Those letters have 2 possibilities. And then there's 12 Pshutot. There's 12 letters that are straightforward letters. They don't have any issues, right? They know what they are. There's not one possibility, another possibility. Dagesh Rafeh. They don't come with a dot or not a dot in them. They're just straight letters. And those are the letters which correspond to each of the months. There's only 12 of them. Again, you might have the question, what about the 13th month? We'll get to that next month, God willing. Okay, so what are those letters? Those letters are Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Lamed, Nun, Samach, Ayin, Tzadik, Kuf, and those are the letters. And then corresponding to those letters and corresponding to the months, you also have a chush. A chush means a sense. Now, how many senses do we have? No, we don't. We have 12. Yeah, we think we have 5 because that's what we taught, right? We taught there's only 5 senses. Says the Zohar, no. There's far more senses than just 5. There are 12 senses, one corresponding to each of the months. What are these 12 senses? Let's just go through them very briefly. Re'iyah, sight, shmiya, hearing, these we know. Reicha, the ability to smell something, scent, right? Dibur, speech is a sense, right? A sense, communication. Communication, the Zohar, the Sefer Yetzirah regards as a sense. The ability to communicate is a sense. Some people don't have that sense, right? They can't communicate well. They call them autistic or whatever, people like that. Sometimes autistic people don't communicate well. They're lacking a little bit in one of the senses. And nevertheless, we find that any person that's lacking in one of the senses is usually much more sensitive in one of the other senses. Okay, so there's dibur, achila. Eating is a sense. Everyone knows that, right? And I'll explain this a little bit more later on. Very, very interesting. Why dafka, achila, eating? Eating is a sense. You have to have a sense of eating. We'll find out a little bit more about that. There's mishush. Mishush is touching, yeah, the sense of touch. Maaseh, the sense of action. There's hiluch, the sense of movement. Movement is also a sense. In fact, when they do sensory deprivation, what do they do? It's a form of torture called sensory deprivation. They put a person in a closed room where there's no light. They put them in a bath of water so they can't feel anything, like they're at a constant temperature. There's no sound, no communication, and they keep them in that. And within a very short time, people start to go a little bit cuckoo. Why? Because there's no move. They can't move. They're tied into wherever it is that they are. They can't move. They can't see. They can't hear. It's sensory deprivation, and then they start to hallucinate. And within a very short time, hallucinations begin. And part of it has to do with movement, because they found that if a person can move, as we see with makat choshech, it says about makat choshech that people were standing, couldn't sit, and people were sitting, couldn't stand. That was part of the makat. Why was it part of that particular plague? Because that is one of the senses that we need, the ability to move in order to feel like we're human beings. People who unfortunately are, struck with paralysis. It's a very hard thing to have to deal with. Ka'as, anger, or sometimes in some places called roges. Ka'as is also a sense, right? A sense of anger. Most people don't have any sense when they have, but that's a different. Okay, the sense of laughter is another one. Guess which, the sense of laughter, which month does that go with? Adar, of course, right? Adar, right? Adar. Then the sense of hirhur, thinking, or what's sometimes called iyun, the ability to look deeply into things. And finally, the sense of shena. Right, sleep. You see that at Nadada Shnat HaMelech, at the time of Achashverosh, at the time of Purim, it said Nadada Shnat HaMelech. Right, he was experiencing the wrong chush in the wrong time. He was fast asleep, and then he woke up from his sleep because of Mordechai and Esther and so on. In any event, Shena is one of them. We'll get to all of them. Each of them has. We'll explain each of them in the month that it is relevant. Not only that, but each month is associated with a certain aspect of the body, and the Sefer Yetzirah goes through the 12 months, and it says, and these correspond to a certain part of the body. called the manhig, right? That's a sort of a leading aspect of the body. Now, these are also very, very interesting. 2 hands, the 2 legs, 2 kidneys, the spleen, the liver, the gallbladder, the small intestines, the stomach, and the large intestine. These are also 12, there's those 12, which are also each one corresponds to the month, right? Corresponds to one of the months. Now, it's very, very interesting, as we'll see soon, why they include 3 of them have to do with eating, right? Yeah, in fact, more of them, even more than that, because you have the kidneys, the spleen, the liver, the gallbladder, the small intestine, the large intestine, the stomach. All of that has to do with eating, right? So eating is obviously a very important part of this whole thing, and we'll see why soon. Okay, so this month is the month of Shevat, as everybody knows. And we are going to discuss the month in terms of the permutation of the name of Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the mazal of this particular month, the Shevat, the tribe, which is the tribe, the months are also associated each with a tribe, 12 months, 12 tribes. The chush, the sense that's associated with it, and the letter that is associated with the month, not necessarily in that order. And the Sefer Yetzirah goes to divide them up generally into the following. He calls them Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, right? So that everything is divided really into these 3 categories. Olam, which means literally the world. Shana is time, the year. And Nefesh is being. Space, time, and being, right? So space, time, and being are the 3 primary qualities that have to be looked at. In terms of Olam, that's the Mazal. In terms of Shana, it's the Chodesh, that particular Chodesh, including the permutation of the name. And the Nefesh is the Chush, the sense that that particular month represents. So we're in Chodesh Shvat. What is Chodesh Shvat about? First of all, the name Shvat is actually mentioned in Tanakh, in Zechariah. Zechariah Aleph Zayin, first parak in Zechariah, Pasuk Zayin, says as follows: B'yom 24 ל-12 Chodesh, hu Chodesh Shvat, month of Shvat, Bishnat 2 l'Daryavish, in the days of Daryavish, in the 2nd year of the reign of Daryavish, who was a king about 3,500 years ago already, Daryavish. And in the 2nd year of Daryavish, Haya Dvar Hashem al Zechariah, Mim Rachiyahu, etc. Right, and it goes on to say what transpired over there. But all we need to know is that the month of Shvat is mentioned in Mikra, it's mentioned in Zechariah. Now, what does the word Shvat mean? Says the Mefarshim, the word Shvat is from a word which means matzlif. Matzlif means like to whip. When the rains fall very hard, right? The rains in Israel in this time of the year, in the month of Shvat, when they fall, they whip, right? They fall very hard. And that's what the month of Shvat really means. And we'll see why this is significant soon. All right, the tziruf of the name of Hashem, which happens in this month. The tziruf is always according to the letters of a pasuk, like either the initial letters of four words or the end letters of 4 words, right? 4 consecutive words. The beginning letters or the end letters of 4 consecutive words. So this month is in Parshat Bechukotai, Perchav Zayin, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, says as follows. It's talking about the mitzvah of Ma'aser Behemah, right? Taking the 10th animal that passes under the Shavet, that passes under the, related to the month of Shvat, right? That passes under the, as the animals are going out of the pen, right? You sort of chase them out of the pen and you count 1, 2, 3 with your stick, right? 1, 2, 3. And the 10th one, you mark as the 10th one. And that one has to be given Doesn't matter in what order they come out, nice one, not nice one, that's the one that has to be. So the pasuk says as follows, Lo yevaker ben tov l'ra. Don't make any distinction between a good animal and a not good one, right? If the sheep is coming out of the thing, you don't say, oh, I want the good one to come out, I want the bad one to come out, and you arrange it that way. No, whichever one comes out the 10th, that's the one that is ma'asar behema, right? Ma'asar behema. So again, lo yevaker ben tov l'ra, don't make a distinction between good and bad. Lo yimirenu, and you can't exchange it for a different one. Vim hamir yimirenu, and if you did exchange it, if you did the wrong thing and you did exchange it, v'hayahu utmurato ye kodesh lo yigael. Both of them become kodesh. Both of them now have to give to meiser, and lo yigael, you cannot redeem it. You cannot give money and redeem that particular animal. That animal remains kodesh. So the words v'lo yimirenu v'im hamer, the hay of hamer, yimirenu yud, v'haya, the vav, who, it and its tmura, and the one that exchanged for it will be kodesh, lo yigael. Okay, so the permutation therefore of this month is hey yud, vav hey. First hey, yud, vav, and then the final hey of Shem Hashem. Now, it's very interesting that in this particular month, there are two very well-known yortzites, two Yemei Shana, two days which commemorate the passing of very great tzaddikim. And both of them are related to this particular pasuk, not only because it was in the month of Shevat, but because of what the verse says, V'ha'asiri yeh kodesh, right? The 10th one will be kodesh. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Rashash, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, who was a very, very great Makubal, Taimani, and he, Sidur HaRashash and Kavanot HaRashash, etc., etc. So Rabbi Shalom Sharabi was a very great Makubal. Now, there is a sefer, and it's written by Rabbi Chaim Palaji, who was a great Sfadi Makubal, and he says as follows, that the Arizal, before he was Niftar, the Arizal was Niftar very, very young. Right? He was very, very young when he passed away. But he said, he promised his students that, don't worry, it's not all over, right? I'm coming back. I'll come back. Rabbi Chaim Palaji and various others, various Mekubalim said, when did the Arizal come back? He came back in Rashash, right? V'hayahu tmurato yeh kodesh, right? He and his exchange will be kodesh. So we say about the Rashash that he was the kedusha that came from the Arizal, and therefore there's a very, very interesting resolution of a machloket, of a disagreement between the Rashash and the Arizal. In the Kavanot, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but there's one place where the Rashash says, in his Kavanot of Tfilah, he says something which the Arizal said the opposite. So one of the Hasidic rabbis, Rav Levi Yitzchak Bedichev, said that we can resolve this problem. How do we resolve the problem? Since the Arizal came back in the Rashash, the Arizal changed his mind, and we go according to the Rashash. Right? That is the solution to the problem. In other words, don't worry. We're going to follow the Rashash in this particular thing because he was the Acharon. That's how the halacha goes. You follow the Acharon generally, right? The later one, you follow the later sage. But you don't have to worry about it at all because essentially it was the Arizal anyway, and he changed his mind and said it through the Rashash. So we understand, therefore, the whole concept of this particular month is Vahayahu utmurato ye kodesh. He and his exchange, in other words, the Arizal and the 10th, the one who was passed away on the 10th of the month, the Rashash, it's a remez that he was the kodesh, he was the Arizal's Gilgul. Another great Hasidic Rebbe who passed away in this month was the Rabbi Rayatz, who was the Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak Schneerson, who passed away on the 10th of Shvat. also on the 10th of Shevat, and his son-in-law, who's the Lubavitcher Rebbe, became Rebbe as well. They say the same thing over there. Both of them are Kodesh. One fills the place of the other. Okay, good. So, that is the idea of the permutation of this particular month. Now, what's the mazal of this particular month? The mazal is Dili, right? Dili. Dili means what? Yeah, usually means bucket. That's the way we usually translate it. But let's say a water jar, because a bucket sounds like what you clean the floors with. This is more a water jar, which in Tanakh is called. Anyone know what it's called in? No, that's in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew. Yeah, but a kad. Yeah, a kad. Yeah, vatikach kada, and she took her jar, and we'll see why this is important soon. Okay. So, the mazal for this month is the Kli. I think in English it's called Aquarius, if I'm not mistaken. So, one of the commentaries on the Sefer Yetzirah, which when the Sefer Yetzirah said that the mazal of this particular month is the Dili, this water jar, he says like this. This is Rabbi Moshe Mibutril, right? Moshe Butril. He says as follows. He says in the name of Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon was the 10th century, one of the greatest Gaonim, right? The Rav Hai Gaon. And he says in his name as follows. Shemazal Dli hu hamazal shel Yisrael. If any mazal is the mazal of Bnei Yisrael, it's the water jar, right? It's the kad, it's the Dli. Why? So he explains. Alpha be the Kamalon, and even though we conclude and we agree, Ein Mazal Yisrael, that Bnei Yisrael does not have a Mazal, Hainu Yisrael Aledei Ma'asehem B'Torah Hofchin Shfitat HaMazal. Bnei Yisrael, through their work in Torah and Mitzvot, through following Torah and Mitzvot, doing what we have to do, we are able to overturn the rulership of the Mazal over us, L'chol Asher Yichpetzu, and turn it any way we want. We can make the mazal do what we want. It's not that we do what the mazal wants. The mazal does what we want if we follow Torah and Mitzvot. Aval b'tolada, as far as birth is concerned, yesh lehem mazal. When we're born with a mazal, but if we grow up in Torah and Mitzvot and we do what we're supposed to do, then we can change the mazal. We can make the mazal do what we want the mazal to do. And therefore, and therefore, our mazal is the dli, this bucket, this water jar. Kidli asui lishov bo mayim. A dli, a bucket is made to draw water out of a well, like this water jar or whatever. This bucket draws water out of the well. V'zeh pu'ulato, and that's what it does. V'ein mayim ela Torah. There's no water. Whenever we say water, we mean Torah. And the whole point is that Bnei Yisrael, the mazal of Bnei Yisrael, is that we're able to take the waters of Torah and pour them out for everybody to use. Right? We're able to take the Torah and make it drinkable, so to speak, for everybody. Kumo shekatuv, as he brings the pasuk from Yeshaya, Hoi kol tzameh l'chulu mayim. Everyone who's thirsty, go to water. Well, why does Yeshaya have to tell you he's thirsty? You know you got to drink water. No, he means Torah, right? If your soul is thirsty, if your neshama is thirsting for Hashem, where do you find? Go to the Torah. That's what the Yeshaya tells us. Okay. Now we see a number of different places where this is vitally important and essentially part of our history, this idea of a deli, of this bucket, where we draw out water of the Torah, the waters of the Torah. For example, Eliezer, Eved Abraham, right? Here is Eliezer, and he's going to look for shidduch for Yitzhak. Abraham Avinu sends him on a shlichut. He has a mission, and he's got to go find a wife for Yitzhak. What does he do? He says, okay, I'm going to find a girl, but how do I know if she's the right one? Well, I'm going to set up a test, right? What's the test? The test is I'm going to ask her for some water, right? And if she gives me water, then I'll know that this is the one. And not only does she give him water, but she gives water to him, to his animals, etc., etc. She keeps on pouring water until everyone's satiated. I don't need anything more to drink. So we see that the concept of Dili, this particular month, is the month that symbolizes Bnei Israel, because that's what we do. We pour and pour and pour for everybody in the whole world until everyone's satiated, then they turn on us. Never mind the last part. Right? Okay. So we see that as far as Yitzchak's wife was concerned, finding a wife for Yitzchak, this was the sign, the Siman Muvhak, right? The clear sign that this was going to be his wife. We find a similar thing with Yitzchak himself. One of the things that Yitzchak himself did was he dug wells. He dug wells, and he dug more and more wells until there was water for everybody. People argued with him about the water, etc., etc. So he just left it. He went to a new place until he came to the Chavot, and there he had as much water as needed, etc. He also dug wells. And how do you draw the water up from the well? Well, you need a bucket. So it again symbolizes Yaakov, the same thing. When Yaakov went and he went to the well and he saw Rachel, right? Then he rolled the stone of the Be'er, and she was able to put her pitcher into the water and get out water for her and give water to her flocks. So again, we see this whole concept of Deli is a remez to the Torah, and that's why the word but Tored et kadam al shichma, she took her kad down from her shoulder. Kad, the word kad, chaf dalet, 24, is a remez to the 24 books of Tanakh. Right? It's a remez to the 24 books of Tanakh. Kada. Her kad, the kad is 24. Okay? Same thing when we get to Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu goes to, he runs away from Paro, and he goes to, he waits by the well, and the Sfarim HaKadoshim say, why did Moshe Rabbeinu Dafka go to a well? Because he knew that that's where, like everybody else, Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, that's where he's going to find his Kala, right? He's going to find his wife at the well, because she's going to come and draw water for the flocks or whatever, for a family. And so he went to the well, and he too would find his wife through that. As you know, the daughters of Yitro came and he chased away the shepherds that were bothering them, and he drew water for them. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't want anyone else to bother with it. He drew the water for them. And that would be significant, because later on we see that what was the day, what day of what month would Moshe Rabbeinu start to teach all of Bnei Israel the entire Torah? Rosh Chodesh Shevat, exactly, today. Right? Today was the day of Ho'il B'ashtei Yom, Be'echad L'Chodesh, Ho'il Moshe Be'er et Torah. He started to teach and explain the entire Torah to all of the Jewish people before he passed away, which was on Vav Adar. So for 40 days he taught the Torah to all of Bnei Israel. Okay. Good. The Shevat of this particular month is also the Shevat of Asher, and we'll come to that. The tribe of Asher. We'll come to that. We'll come to that shortly. But let's first talk a little bit more about the Chushim. First of all, the letter for this month, the Hebrew letter that corresponds to this month, is letter Tzadik. Some people say Tzadik, some say Tzadik, right? But Tzadik is the letter that corresponds to the month of Shvat. That's according to Sefer Yetzirah, Tzadik. And what's the Chush that corresponds to the month of Shvat? What's the Chush? The talent, so to speak, the sense, Achila, right? Eating. There you go. Eating corresponds to the sense of eating, of Achila. So there's a pasuk that says, Tzadik ochel lesova nafsho. A tzaddik eats to satiate his soul, right? Tzaddik is the letter of the month. So the tzaddik from which the month comes eats, in other words, partakes of things in this world, not for the sake of his body, not for the sake of his waistline, but for the sake of his neshama. What does that mean? It means that the eating of a tzaddik is a holy thing. Now, we find many places in the Torah where you see that the Chachamim were very sparse in their eating. There's a story which is told of Hillel HaZaken, when he would go and eat, he would say to his students that he's going to do kindness for the poor, the poor, wretched body which belongs to him, right? The poor, wretched one, by which is meant his body. He's going to go and eat. But generally, the month of Shevat is associated not with achila in a negative sense, eating in a negative sense, in other words, to stay away from eating and to not eat and to fast and so on and so forth, but exactly the opposite. The whole concept of eating as a pleasure and a joy. Therefore, the joyous festival that we find in the month of Shevat is Tu B'Shvat. What do? We eat fruit, and all fruit is given for ta'anug, right? It's given for delight and for enjoyment, etc., etc. And that's what it's that is therefore the chush of this particular month. Now, when we say a chush, the concept of a sense, and that's what it means. That's what it means that tzaddik ochel lo sovan nafsho. A tzaddik eats in order to satisfy his neshama, because when a person is eating, what do? The Arizal explains, it's brought down in Zohar, but Arizal explains at a great length, that in everything around us, everything that's mutar, that's permissible to Jewish people, there are sparks of holiness. Those sparks of holiness came from what's called the shattering of the vessels of the world of Tohu. It's a complicated subject, but right at the beginning of creation, right? There was darkness on the deep, and that was the world. It's called the world of Tohu, the world of chaos. What happened with the world of chaos? It shattered, it fell. It shattered and fell and became embedded in all of creation. The spark of godliness within everything that is permitted to us is embedded in the world around us. And therefore, Bnei Israel, when they were in Mitzrayim, what were they doing? They were elevating these sparks. Through their very, very hard work, they took out of the 288 sparks that fell. There were 288 sparks from the various vessels of the world of Tohu that fell. And it was done deliberately. Hashem did this deliberately, so that we have Torah and mitzvot, etc. Let's not get into it now, but when they left Mitzrayim, it says, Ve'erev Rav alu itam. 202 of those 288 sparks were taken out, right? They were extracted from Egypt, from Mitzrayim, and we're only left all these years now to rectify the other 86, which obviously is taking a long time. But in any event, the whole point of eating is not for the sake of simple enjoyment, but l'stovan nafsho, for the enjoyment of the soul. In other words, extracting those sparks of holiness and restoring them to their place of holiness through making the proper brachot before and after, through eating with kavanah, through saying about Torah at the table when we're eating, etc. Now, interestingly enough, all the Suudot Mitzvah, in other words, all the mitzvot of Suudat Mitzvah and brachot are all associated with elevating these sparks. That's a very interesting thing that recent science has come up with an understanding that basically they say like this, to put it in layman's language, that the stomach is the second brain, right? It's the person's second brain. That's what they say. The stomach is the second brain. Why? Because there's an entire ecosystem of bacteria and a neural network in the stomach. Neuron, you know, when you get butterflies in your stomach, right? That's the neurons in your stomach. They say that most of the neurons that you have in your brain, there's more neurons in the stomach than there are in your spinal cord, which is an amazing thing. So we see that eating is an extremely important part of our functioning. A person eats right, and his mood changes according to his eating, right? If a person doesn't eat right, just eats junk all day, whatever it is, going to get in a bad mood and become ill, and so on and so forth. And it's well known and documented that the stomach has a tremendous amount to do with stress and with all kinds of illnesses when a person doesn't eat properly and when he doesn't behave in the proper way. it says that up to 90% of the cells involved in responses carry information to the brain rather than receiving messages from the brain. The stomach sends more messages to the brain than the brain sends to the stomach. It's a very interesting thing. So your guts are very influential when it comes to these things. So we see that achila is a very, very important part of life, right? Important part of life, an important part of our avodat Hashem. Now, finally, we get to the Shevat, the tribe that is associated with this month, which is the tribe of Asher. Right now, it says about Asher, one of the psukim, Asher shmena lachmo. Right, his lechem is full of shemen. It's full of oil. Right, because Shevat Asher, they had a tremendous amount of, it's up in the north, and they had a lot of olive trees over there, and so olive oil. But it means more than that. His lechem was dipped in olive oil. Now, what does that mean? We'll see shortly. And he's the one that gives ma'adanim, in other words, good food, healthy, delightful food for the king. What's the king? So the Mefarshim explain, moach lev kaved. Right? Your mind, your heart, and your stomach. That's the melech. Asher is the one who, if you understand things right, is the one who gives your mind, your heart, and your stomach food in the right order. It has to be melech and not the opposite way around, right? Or lemech or klum or whatever, various ways of the permutations of the word melech. In any event, Asher is the one who in whose area there's a lot of olive trees and therefore olive oil. Olive oil is one of the 7 liquids of the Torah. The 7 liquids that are mentioned in the Torah, which are metame yadayim and things like that. They are water, olive oil, wine, dew, blood, milk, and dvash tmarim. That's it. Yeah, dvash is honey from dates, date honey. In any event, of all those liquids, so Kabbalah discusses these liquids and says that the nichnas yayin yetzesod, right? When wine goes in, the secrets come out, right? But what is shemen? Shemen is not only razin doraita, the secrets of the Torah, but razin doraita, the secrets of the secrets of the Torah. So shemen, therefore, represents the deepest secrets of the Torah. And that's why there's very psukim that Eov wanted a wife, famous Eov, wanted a wife who was a chachama. Right? He wanted a wife who was a chachama, so he sent a messenger to get a wife for him from the land of Asher. Why? Because it was known that the women of Shevat Asher were chachamim, right? They were very smart. Why? Says the Chazal, because of all the olive oil, right? Made them smart. The olive oil made them smart. Makes a person smart. But it's the concept of razin doraita. Also, we know the story that Serach bat Asher, right? Serach was one of the daughters of Shevat Asher, and she was the one that devised the plan to tell Yaakov that Yosef was still alive, right? It was Serach bat Asher that went in, she devised a plan. She was very musical, and she went in, she was singing and playing a harp or whatever. And she said in her song, she explains she said in the words of her song, that Od Yosef Chai, right? And from that, it wasn't a shock to Yaakov, it wasn't such a shock to him that he would, something would happen. But how did she figure this out? She was a chachama. She was from Shevat Asher. She figured it out, right? So that is the idea of Shevat Asher, that it's the deepest teachings of the Torah and gives a person tremendous chokhmah. So that is the basic outline of this particular month. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Yeah.
Two quick questions. One clarification. Asiri, also called the permutation.
Yeah.
The side fragment. So Asiri, both the Arizal and the Rosh Hashanah, their yard side is Yud.
No,
so what's the Asiri?
The yard side of the Rosh Hashanah is on Yud. Yeah. Yeah. The yard side of the Rosh Hashanah is on Yud.
Also, you mentioned Dali, the centrality of Dali, that all the Masalot, Dali is definitive of Jewish people.
Yeah.
So I ask you a verse from Isaiah, Ein goyim kamar midli.
Yeah, like a drop from a bucket.
So is there any significance to that?
I'm sure there is. I would have to look up what the exact explanation is, exactly why that is. But,
is definitive, you said.
Yeah.
So kamar midli.
It means a drop from a bucket. Yeah, we have the bucket and they have the drop. That's, in other words, we have the flow and whatever. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How does the deep astrology, how that study of the stars, how does that fit into this?
Well, it's a study of the Mazalot, but in the sense that we, in the analysis that we just said, yes, there are various constellations, and they do have some kind of effect on people, right, physically. But our understanding of them is that Jews essentially transcend the effect of the stars, and even though a person is born with under a certain constellation, in other words, is born in a certain way with certain qualities, and certain, everybody has their negative and, let's call it chisronot, how would you say, lacking, things that they're lacking. Nevertheless, we can overcome that through our study of Torah and sort of thing. No. Yeah. Oh, Mazal? The word Mazal comes from the word Yizal Midalyav, to pour out. It's pouring out. Nizila is like a flow. When a tap drips, it's called a Nizila, right? But Yizal Mai Midalyav, that's a pasuk it's a pasuk in the Brachot of Bnei Israel. Yizal Mai Midalyav, water flows out of Hashem's water, gourd to Bnei Israel, right? Yizal. So the word Mazal comes from the word Yizal. As we said in the Zohar, explains the word Mazal in two different ways. Mazal means the constellations, the natural forces that there are in the world, in the universe, and then there's the Nizila from Torah, from a very, very high level, the downflow, the outpouring of special insight and spirituality to the Jewish people in particular. Okay.